Every demon king is granted a special power by the demon god Asura, among which our boy was no exception. However, it seems something was bothering him. He called his secretary Lilith and asked her once again to repeat what power he was granted with. She replied Kairos was granted the power of gacha, an ability to spend points to obtain random item drop boxes. Kairos was strongly disappointed to have this gacha as his power because according to him it doesn't make sense for a demon king to have a power like this, since it neither provides immense strength nor the ability to control surroundings, gain knowledge, or anything at all like other demon kings. Lilith requested him to calm down since the demon god might hear it, but Kairos couldn't be quiet because he can't stand the idea of going to conquer humanity with this power. He took an example scenario that if he faces a hero in a fierce battle, how embarrassing it would be for him to show this gacha power to him and open random boxes, as if he was supposed to kill the hero by making him laugh to the death. Kairos questioned if he couldn't just change his power, to which she denied, saying it wasn't possible to change or remove the powers granted by the demon king. Kairos asked for adding another power to it then, but it wasn't possible either. Kairos felt it was all too much on his poor soul, because now how the hell was he supposed to rule the world with gacha? Lilith gave him a kind reminder to not badmouth the great demon lord, but Kairos argued he had plenty of valid reasons to complain. She told him the demon king has already heard his complaints once, and if it happens again, he's done for. Kairos felt the chills, but he still couldn't help but ask just why he was the only one to receive this weird gacha skill, while all others got powerful ones. Lilith explained the reason behind this was that apparently, the demon god happened to get addicted to a game from the human world, where he played around with his gacha skill. Kairos felt dumb as she continued that the demon king liked the skill so much that he used it to become the #1 in that game. She asked if he wasn't happy to receive the #1 player's skill, but Kairos thought a bit realistically, it doesn't make sense. He decided to give it a try after many thoughts, after hearing which, Lilith activated this skill for him. Kairos were some golden magic boxes appearing out of nowhere, and when he opened one of them, he hoped to receive some magical ability or at least a dragon. But the gacha box gave him a cute little green slime instead. He was stoned out from this super rare reward, just kidding, while Lilith asked him to just move on to open the next box. Kairos opens 4 more boxes and gets only slimes from them again. Lilith remained optimistic and told him to try opening the last box as well. Kairos already lost hope for anything great after so many rewards, but to his surprise, this time he received something different from slimes. This box gave him a young succubus, which was again not a great reward at all, since what can he even do out there with a minor succubus? Lilith just congratulated him for at least not getting a slime again, but like hell our boy would just accept it, especially after all the struggle he went through in the Demon Academy. Lilith saw him walking away in anger and tried to persuade him to accept what's already decided for him. But our boy just smiled and made it clear to Lilith that he can't just sit this one out, because demons were the kind to always strive to become stronger, and this just does not sit well with him. He asked Lilith to open the gates as he wanted to confront the demon god himself. We get to see some hell-like scenery of the demon realm, and inside the demon god, Astraea's castle, some demon lords were waiting in line in order to meet him for miscellaneous reasons. Our disappointed boy also arrived to meet the great demon lord, but just then, he felt a chilling energy from the back. Kairos didn't want to meet this girl behind at all because she had some grudge against him. He told her they shouldn't do this here, but she was dead set on killing him this time because she can't forgive him for what he did. It was getting troublesome for our boy, but he don't have any skill to defend himself against her either. Kairos just crossed his hands to endure the pressure, while all the other demons in line started running away after this fight between demon lords began. The red-haired girl charged at Kairos with magic spheres, while Kairos had to rely on his secretary to protect him. The red-haired was not going to give him any chance to run away, and Lilith quickly grabbed a chair and threw it the red-haired girl's way to clash against her magic spheres. Upon being hit by such a strong magic, the chair naturally shattered in small pieces, while the red-haired was even more angry about Kairos still being alive. Lilith reminded the red-haired to calm down in this sacred place, where they wait to meet the great demon lord. The red-haired wasn't showing any signs of stopping until she settled this with Kairos' death for his crime. She attacked Lilith and threw her out of her way, and she went flying straight to hit the wall. Kairos was worried for Lilith, but she didn't go down with just that, because now she became serious about this fight to protect her master Kairos. She would do anything to protect him, since his existence was the sole reason for her life. The red-haired was badass and didn't mind killing both the master and secretary if it's what it takes. Our guy tried calling out Batisha and said he knew she got something against him, but he requested her not to do this here. Batisha didn't care for what he said, and she was hell-bent on killing him even if she ended up being punished by the great demon lord. Kairos knew if he were to fight her here, he would definitely lose, so he can't do anything except see how this fight turns out, while feeling disgraced as a fellow helpless demon lord. As the fight progressed, the tension built up in the atmosphere. Lilith questions just who in the world Batisha was to have this much power. Beticia replied she was a fellow demon lord, who reigns over a tenth of the earthly realm, the fierce demon lord Beticia Confretia. Her name sounded familiar to Lilith, because she recalls that among the total of 72 demon lords, only 4 reigned over more than half of the world. They were the demon king of despair and grief Capiria Bordos, the demon king of dejection and sorrow, Rubernia Malmas, the demon king of joy and madness, Sartracrus, and lastly the demon king of rage, Beticia Confretia. Lilith felt really unlucky to confront one of the 4 strongest demon lords, whereas Beticia was charging an even bigger magic sphere this time, which will really kill them for sure. The aura emitted by the sphere began to spoil away the surrounding walls, and she launched it at an incredible speed. As the existence-shattering orb approached Lilith, our guy showed the courage to run to the front and shield Lilith with his own body. But to their surprise, the magic sphere vanished into thin air just before touching him, leaving Beticia confused about what just happened. Kairos was puzzled by it the same, while Lilith noticed Kairos just used magic nullification unconsciously. Beticia questioned Kairos how he was still alive, to which he replied he was just as curious about it. Lilith stated that magic nullification was an ability that the demon god Astrea possessed a long time ago, and it didn't make sense why Kairos had it. At the same time, the gate to the demon lord's office opened and the demon lord Astrea entered the hallway, asking in a cold voice who dared to make noise in his place. He joked they must have been having fun out here doing something while the great demon lord was busy inside. The red-haired quickly humbled in the presence of the great demon lord, after which everyone was called in for a meeting. Astrea casually took 1 cup out of drink for himself and asked others leisurely why they were here to meet him. Kairos told the demon god that he thinks there's a problem with his power. Beticia was startled by hearing Kairos, since nobody could dare go against the great demon lord. Kairos claimed that he had never seen a demon lord with the skill gacha, after hearing that even Beticia couldn't stop laughing out and spilling the drink. Kairos pointed out at Beticia and told the demon king that was the typical reaction of anyone hearing about his power. So he doesn't think he'll be able to instill any fear in anyone with a power like that, especially when the power to obtain random boxes was too complicated, that too with terrible probabilities for good drops. The great demon lord asked Kairos if he meant that he wanted to change his power. Kairos agreed to this statement, but the demon lord refused it because he was just too bored right now, and he wanted to see how fun it would be to see Kairos play gacha. Kairos questioned how could Astrea just give him an ability for fun, and to make it fair, Astrea replied he will compensate him by giving something else instead. Kairos wondered what it could be, and Beticia was confused as Astrea never heard anyone's complaint like this. Just then, Astrea called out Beticia in a strict voice, giving her chills, and he stated that she committed a crime by disgracing him right in front of his office. He reminded her that she didn't have the abilities to use them like that. Astrea confined Beticia out of rage, and she requested the great demon lord for forgiveness. Astrea told her she deserves to die for what she did earlier, and she started being strangled slowly by him. She begged for mercy for her life, after which Astrea ordered Beticia that from now on she was stripped of her demon lord's title and her position would be taken over by a substitute. Beticia had no choice but to take whatever punishment she would be given, and the great demon lord proceeded to serve her a sentence to become a subordinate of Kairos, the demon king of greed, and serve his orders for the rest of her life. This came out really unexpected and heavy for both Kairos and Beticia, but when the great demon lord asked if they had any complaints, they couldn't just oppose it and were dismissed from the meeting just like that. The next day, our boy was sleeping well in his bed, then he woke up all startled, trying to rethink if what happened yesterday was a dream or reality. When he saw Beticia standing there with slimes, he covered his head with worries to just what will happen to his life now, with his gacha skill and a subordinate who was after his own life. Beticia almost kicked him in anger for whatever happened, but Lilith caught her while Beticia kept shouting she can't accept this. Kairos still doesn't know why she holds a grudge against him, but they have to live together anyways. Later, Beticia taunted how could they live together like this, to which Lilith replied that however it happened doesn't matter, and they will have to follow the great demon lord's decision no matter what. Lilith could see the hateful looks both were giving each other, and she tried to change the topic by mentioning they should first decide room for Beticia. She recalled that the room they were in right now was the demon lord Kairos' bedroom and office, and the room below his was Lilith's room. The attic under the roof was used by the slimes and succubus, and when they visited there, the succubus woke up and saw her master Kairos and ran to hug him. Kairos got hugged faster than he could react, after which he felt troubled as she got on his shoulder while repeating how much she loves him. Kairos asked Lilith why was succubus acting like this, to which she replied that all the monsters from gacha would be subservient to the demon lord, so that's why the slimes and succubus didn't want to leave his side. Kairos was hardly able to stand properly, as he asked what abilities they had other than causing trouble. The succubus ended up eating his hairs, making him scold her for doing that. Kara's got an idea and turned to Bactecia, asking wouldn't she have to obey whatever he asked of her, seemingly having some intentions behind this question. Sometime later in the friendly demon lord Kara's castle, it's been a week since then, and he asked Lilith what Bactecia was up to. Lilith replied that he need not to worry about her, since she seemed to be having fun playing with others, unlike what they expected, and Bactecia seemed to be even happier than she used to be. Karos was glad he dealt with it, and surprisingly she did get along with others well, which helped him in keeping his own surroundings a little more docile than before. Now it was time for the main business, so he asked Lilith what was the current situation. She replied that their castle was still not discovered by the villagers, since they have set up double barriers to hide it. Karavas figured it was going well for now, and he recalls that after some changes occurred in the earthly realm, among the 72 demon kings, almost 30% of them have been taken down by human adventurers and heroes, so it increased the risks for demons and demon lords, including Karos himself. So, in the beginning, he had to conceal his whole castle to avoid unnecessary dangers, especially when his castle was located right beside a human village. But now he needs to head out and take some actions to take over the world. For starters, he planned to hunt down monsters to join their army, so he asked Lilith for the monster habitats present nearby them. She replied there were around 4 monster habitats around them, and the closest to them was the goblin camp, with a population around 300 goblins. Further down the road, there was also an orcs domain set up in the middle of mountains, and they were said to be around 500 orcs in total. Further in the forest, there was also an ogre's cave, which had only one ogre in the middle hibernation. However, the last monster was shrouded in mystery, and they haven't been able to identify it yet. She asked Karos which one of them they would go after first, to which he replied after some thinking that they should start with the goblins. Lilith understood it and took this chance to inform him of a skill-related quest he had related to it. She told him if he managed to conquer the goblins' habitat, he would receive 2 random boxes as a reward. Karos believed he might get something good this time, and headed straight off to the goblins' camp with Bactecia. Bactecia didn't like how she, a demon lord who ruled 1/10 of the continent, was now going to fight goblins as a subordinate of the guy she hates the most. Karos told her to keep quiet and follow him, but she claimed that was really boring, so instead she will handle it and show a rookie demon lord how it's done. Karos smelled trouble, and his hunch came true, as Bactecia started running straight to the goblins' camp with no caution. When they arrived near the goblins' camp, Karos saw that even these monsters seemed to have good defenses. He looked around the village with his demon eyes and noticed there were more goblins here than expected. He asked Bactecia to suggest what they should do, but to his surprise, she was nowhere to be found beside him. Bactecia straight up went to the center of Goblins' village and declared to all the goblins that she was the former demon king Bactecia, so they should heed her command and bow down to pledge their loyalty to the demon lord Karos. Karos can't believe how stupid she could be, and he saw the gates of camp closing in to trap them inside. They were now surrounded by at least 500 goblins, and soon Karos saw one of the goblins who looked different than others and had a staff in his hands. That goblin seemed to be the chief of this goblin village, and it puts him to think what they should do now. But to his surprise, the goblin chief straight up bowed down and said he will pledge all the goblins' loyalty to Karos. Karos can't believe his eyes as he saw the other goblins doing the same. Bactecia was happy and she claimed this was how it's done, but Karos still didn't think it would be this easy. Later, Karos and Bactecia were welcomed with a feast by the goblins, and they were even served drinks. Bactecia was enjoying the gracious treatment, while Karos was having many doubts in his head. He tried to point out to Bactecia how odd it was that goblins submitted too easily. Just then, a goblin arrived with many fruits and called Karos as master, requesting him try some fruits. Bactecia was just enjoying all this, and she claimed nothing seems to be strange here, as it was natural that the weak would submit to her power. Just then, the goblin chief arrived and said he will now guide Master Karos through the village. Bactecia followed him as if she was the boss, while Karos doubted it all for some reason. While walking around the village, Karos noticed this camp was quite large and could even be considered as a top-tier monster camp. He came across the site of a broken wall in the village and questioned the village chief about it. The village chief replied it was just an ogre that went on a rampage, but they had already taken care of it. Karos' doubts grew after hearing they subdued even an ogre, because it wasn't common for goblins to defeat an overwhelming opponent like an ogre. Even 100 goblins can't deal with an ogre, so it means they must have other means to deal with enemies. He quickly asked Bactecia to throw away the drink in her hands, but she had already drunk it all, and the fact that Karos understood the goblins' conspiracy led to goblins quickly showing their true colors and surrounding them. Karos told Bactecia something was definitely off here, so he asked her to use magic to wipe the goblins out. Bactecia listened to his orders and was about to use her magic, but to her surprise, she couldn't use magic. She wondered where did her magic power disappear off to. Karos realized it was too late for them now that they got tricked by the goblins, as they came jumping and hitting both Karos and Bactecia to render them unconscious. Later, They found themselves in a cave, and Patricia woke up when a water drop fell on her head. She was startled as she recalled what happened before, and now she was tied by ropes. Karos, who was tied right behind her, was also tied, and he told her it was useless to shout for help here. He told her all of this happened because of her stubbornness, and now it seems the goblins were coming to check on them, or maybe just beat them up however they like. Patricia was pissed off and wished that if only she had her magic, those goblins would be dead meat. Karos pointed out that was the whole point, as the goblins seemed smarter than they were supposed to. Karos was certain that another demon king was behind this, and when he thought of it, many suspects came to his mind. Besides, he doesn't think Lilith could come to help them even if she notices something was off, which brings up the question of what they should do. Meanwhile, the goblin chief was boasting how he overpowered the demon lords, and Patricia can't keep watching this humiliating scene. The goblins ran away not to engage her anymore, and 3 days later, Karos and Patricia were their empty stomach and starving since then. It was then Patricia broke the silence and asked Karos why he did that to her back then. Karos asked her what she was talking about, to which she exclaimed at him not to be so clueless, as she was talking about the way he bullied her in Demon Academy. Karos doesn't recall ever bullying her, hearing that she asked if he wasn't the one to spread outrageous rumors about her. Karos asked her what she was talking about again, which pissed her off, and she told him not to play dumb. Patricia claimed to already know for sure that he was the one who spread the rumor that she was the daughter of a brothel owner. The scene shifts to the past when in academy times, she truly thought of him as a friend. So it hit her hard when she came to know he was the one behind spreading such rumors about her. Patricia had a really hard time because of him, but Karos really didn't know about that, and he told her it was his first time hearing this. Patricia felt depressed and a bit confused at the same time, while Karos now gets the reason why she has been trying to kill him. He smiles as he seems to understand the whole situation now. It was then the goblin chief asked the goblins to bring Demon Lord Karos ahead, after which Karos was brought to the front in shackles. Patricia asked them why they were only taking him away, to which the goblin chief replied it was his master's will. Karos was taken to the house of the village chief and was made to stand before a magic crystal to greet the goblin's master. A sound came from the crystal, greeting Karos while mentioning it's been a while. Karos replied it had indeed been long, and he called out the name of that voice's owner, Borkinia Barcelov. Karos guessed it right, and she smirked while sitting calmly on her throne. Borkinia was the demon lord of treachery and deceit, and the first thing she asked was how did Karos find out her identity. Karos ignored the question and asked straight up what she wanted from him. He was sure that Borkinia was after something to have gone this far. Borkinia replied it was nothing much, but she just wanted to persuade Patricia and bring her as her own pawn. Karos was surprised to hear she was after Patricia, and as for the reason, she stated that she wanted Patricia to help her out in getting rid of Sotracross. She wanted to deal with him because currently Sotracross was after her territory, and she wanted to win this battle no matter what. Sotracross was one of the 4 strongest demon lords, and Karos knew that. So Borkinia wanted Patricia because it was impossible for her alone to face Sotracross, and she might win if Patricia was on her side. Karos made it clear that Patricia was currently his subordinate, and she may have lost the power she had as a demon lord. Borkinia mentioned that Patricia still had her influence, but Karos understood if Patricia were to use her influence like that, her territory would crumble into pieces, and in the end, she will also lose trust of her subordinates and they'll leave her. Borkinia asked Karos what he thinks now, since he won't be losing anything in this, on top of which he'll be doing her a favor, and in return, she'll give him as many monsters he wants. Moreover, Borkinia tried to lure Karos into thinking that if Patricia loses all her influence, she will undoubtedly become quiet and remain as Karos' loyal subordinate for the rest of her life. Karos chuckled after hearing the offer Borkinia had, and he straight up rejected it to her face. She got pissed off and asked why that was, to which Karos replied that he lived by some principles, and one of them was to protect his subordinates. And besides, he would much rather accomplish things with his own strength, rather than resorting to despicable acts. He would never help the one who spread filthy rumors about his friend. Karos questioned her how she could spread that rumor about her, and also dared to frame Karos as the culprit to cause them to grow distant. Borkinia brushed off the past and concluded that Karos just chose to die a lonely death in this goblin cave. She ordered the goblin chief to kill the demon lord Karos, and the goblin chief followed her orders. Karos smiled as he seemed to have found a way out of this. The reason he smiled was because Borkinia overlooked one thing, which was to underestimate his power as a demon lord. He called out the slimes which were resting in the pocket of his shirt. He sent out the slimes to deal with the goblins, being confident they could do it. Karos recalled from back when he heard from Lilith that these slimes weren't completely useless, and they had the ability to reduce volume reduction. Karos wondered if they would fit in his shirt's pocket, and to his surprise, the slimes transformed as they sat inside his pocket. He wasn't expecting it to work, but then he realized all the slimes have gotten the size of a coin. Now the slimes went and confined the goblin chief. Karos asked if he liked losing to his slime. The goblin chief requested not to be killed and swore that he would serve him as master for real. Warkinia lost her temper after the goblin chief's unfaithfulness. Karos told her to see for herself how the relationships formed by threats were fragile. Warkinia warned him she still had other goblins to follow her, but Karos asked her if she was confident about that. Warkinia commanded the goblins to kill both Karos and the goblin chief, but the goblins kept looking around in confusion. Karos mentioned if she wanted to use goblins, she needed to understand that they only listened to their representative village chief, and currently he has the chief on his side now. Karos confirmed it with the goblin's chief, and he couldn't dare defy him in his current predicament. Now, Karos asked the goblin chief to lead him to the antidote, while Borkinia can't do anything else from here. She crushed the crystal out of anger and cursed Karos for ruining her plan and even taking the goblins away from her. Meanwhile, Betija was wondering if Karos was dead. She was contemplating over what he said about it being his first time hearing of the rumor. She tried to convince herself that he must have been lying, and she began to recall her past. In the Pantania village, everyone was the kind to survive by gathering trash. Betija used to be the daughter of a low-class prostitute, and her mother would always come back beaten after earning money for themselves. Despite being so poor, she always managed to bring food for her daughter, and Betija felt happier than anyone else. When she was somewhat grown, she was going back home one day only to find out a tragedy happened. She saw her mother being beaten to death by some bad guys, and Betija lost her only family. She was completely broken at the spot. Then one of those guys mentioned this girl had a cute face, and they decided to have some fun before selling her off as a slave. That's when all began, as Betija awakened her magical powers, and she obliterated all of those guys who were the cause of her mother's death. After that, she wandered alone for a long time, until her magical powers were recognized by some nobles. They took her in as their adopted daughter because of her rare magic talent and gave her current name, Betija Confretia. After they adopted her, Betija was admitted into the Demon's Academy, where she used to be a loner because other students often made fun of her as the adopted daughter of Confretia family. However, Betija could notice everyone was being somewhat respectful, just because of her noble background. Although there was one exception, a boy who wasn't from a prestigious family and climbed up on his own. She felt like they were very similar in that way, and eventually they became good friends and got along well with each other as genuine friends. Or so she thought, because one day Betija started being shamed on by everyone when the rumors of her origin spread, and the rumors referred to her as the daughter of a low-class prostitute. Betija's whole world was turned upside down after these rumors. Then one day, a girl called out Betija. It was none other than Borkinia, and she asked Betija if she was okay, considering that her best friend Karos was spreading rumors of her. Betija was lied to, but she had no way of knowing Karos was behind this. So Betija went in to confront Karos and ask him directly if he really did this. However, little did she know, Karos thought she was asking if he was the one behind some magic rampage incident the other day, and unknowingly, he agreed he was indeed the one involved in it. Betija believed he was the one behind rumors after all, so she swore that day to kill him soon anyway. And now in the present, in this cave, Betija was extremely hateful once again when she saw Karos approaching her. She told him to just kill her quickly instead, but Karos corrected her not to say such harsh words and tossed around the antidote for her magic absence. She was surprised to see Karos manage to get the goblin chief under his command, and when asked how he did it, he claimed to have some ways to handle things himself. He went and untied her ropes, while telling her that it was actually Borkinia who spread those filthy rumors. When he broke the truth to her, Betija was left hollowed for a minute because for a long time she had been cursing him for everything. Tears fell on the bottle as she couldn't hold back all the emotions she had been bottling up all this time. Karos told her they shouldn't have any more misunderstandings and returned back to his castle now. After returning back home, Karos relaxed himself, and Lilith was glad he returned safely. She asked him if he was going to take that goblin as his subordinate, and Karos did think they could be advantageous if used properly. So from now on, he decided the goblin chief will be living with them in the castle. He was back to resting, but soon Betija came to talk to him about something. They went to some high and isolated place for some privacy, and Karos asked her what she wanted to talk about Borkinia, who she thought of as a true friend. But it turns out she wasn't really one, and she was sorry for doubting Karos based on her words so blindly. She bowed down and pledged her loyalty to the demon King Karos of her own accord. This was the ceremony and tradition for one to become the subordinate of a demon king out of their own will, and the fact that Betija pledged loyalty for him made Karos believe that she really acknowledged him. He respectfully accepted her as his subordinate, although it was a bit unsettling that she changed her attitude towards him so suddenly. Betija looked up to him now as her master, and now they went on to meet with others and discuss what they were going to do now. She asked if Karos was going after another village like the Goblin Village, but he mentioned they needed to do something before that. He called out Lilith and reminded her, saying there would be rewards for this quest. Lilith agreed he got that right, but she wasn't sure if he'd like it. Kairos wondered how worse it could be than his current situation and told her to proceed. Lilith used her magic to open up something like a portal. She asked Kairos to step inside this portal, and when inside, Kairos was amazed to realize he had his own subspace. However, he wished to know what was the purpose of this place. Lilith guided him ahead to a room where Kairos saw a large screen with the number 3222. He asked Lilith for an explanation and saw a gray box kept on the side with 100 written on it. Lilith told him he could buy drop boxes using the points on the screen, and Kairos understood that the box in his hand costs 100 points. However, he wondered why there were no other auctions aside from this box. Lilith mentioned that according to the Great Demon Lord, once something interesting happens, he will gradually add more options later. Kairos was pissed at the Great Demon Lord having his way again, and aside from that, he could buy only 32 of these boxes at max for now. Kairos figured he should just buy 32 boxes with all the points for now, since he doesn't know when the rest points would be added. After getting 32 boxes, he brought them back to the castle and was about to open them one by one. The first box he opened, bright light glowed out from it, and Kairos received the divine ore Brian. Batisha stated it was a dangerous mineral that could inflict fatal wounds just by touching it. She thought it disappeared 1,000 years ago, so it was confusing to think why it was here. Kairos didn't know it was that precious, and she told it might be more powerful than he expected. Kairos kept it on the side for now and moved on to open the other boxes. After opening many boxes, Kairos only came across an old sword, a rusty shield, and some old paper. Now it went as he expected, as he kept getting really useless drops of items. Lilith told him there were 2 boxes left now, among which when they opened one it smelled extremely bad, which turned out to be a stinking rotten tangerine. Kairos covered his head as every box so far was trash, but then Succubus opened the last box and told him this one wasn't trash. He asked her what that pendant-like thing was, to which she replied after analyzing it that it was a necklace that blocks the user's magic and their magic can't be detected by anyone. Batisha tried it on and she couldn't feel any magic at all. Kairos thought it might be a bit useful, and so far, out of 32 draws, the only useful items he got was this magic-blocking necklace and Brian ore. He started to think it might not be a bad deal, and now they needed to get to clean all the trash. But then Lilith pointed out that the bag filled with papers was actually human money, so instead of throwing it, why don't they buy some apples, since it's in season right now? Kairos figured it was fine and decided to go buy some apples from the market, which aligned with his plan to visit a human village soon anyways. However, when he went out to head for the human's village, Kairos saw Batisha and Succubus following him. He asked why they were here, to which Batisha replied she needs to be around because Kairos was basically a powerless demon lord and might get in trouble. She kept the magic-blocking pendant on her so her magic won't be sensed by anyone else. Kairos understood her point, but he didn't get why even Succubus was coming along. Succubus replied that since she hasn't had her coming-of-age ceremony yet, she doesn't have any magic and can also hide her horns to look like a normal girl. Kairos allowed her to come as well in that case, but on the condition to not cause any trouble out there. They crossed the grass fields and soon arrived at the border walls of the human village. Before heading in, Kairos gave some hoods to the other 2 to wear since they needed to be cautious in the village. They proceeded to walk towards the entrance gate, but Kairos was troubled when he noticed Succubus' head was looking suspicious. She told him it was because of the slime who also wanted to accompany Kairos. Kairos just lowered the hood to keep them hidden, while Batisha remarked it was awesome they could communicate with each other so well. Succubus didn't take it as a compliment, and then she pointed out when they arrived at the entrance. It was a really huge gate with guards stationed on the outside. The guards questioned Kairos what business he had here in this Barterak territory, to which he just claimed to be an adventurer looking around for a place to rest. The guard asked him for his ID, and at the same time, Batisha came forward and reached out her hand saying that was their ID. She was actually using some hypnosis magic to convince the guard that he really checked their identity card and welcomed them to the village. Kairos was thankful for quick assistance there, and they went inside the village. He found the place really spacious and filled with people, but for some reason he noticed the public sentiment doesn't look great. Batisha asked how could he tell that. Kairos replied it was because the food stalls were bustling and people didn't seem to have problem making a living. However, while the children looked happy, the adults seemed to have a grim look on their face. Now that he mentioned it, Batisha noticed it as well. Then suddenly a boy stumbled into Succubus and apologized to her for running like that. Batisha was pissed off and was about to hit the child, but Kairos told her not to hit child and let the child go. She questioned him why he was just letting him go, but he just told her to work on her temper instead. Then Succubus cheered up saying she finally found the fruit stand with apples. Kairos saw it and first told both troublemakers to keep quiet no matter what he said over there. Batisha didn't like the child treatment and they went to the fruit stand. Kairos asked the fruit seller to pack some fresh apples, and along with it he asked the guy why the atmosphere seemed to be a bit off around the area. The man changed to blabbering mode and told our boy that apparently it was because of their lord. He stated that recently a new lord has taken over the territory, and the public opinion about him wasn't all that great because that lord was just like any other arrogant noble. Not just that, but there were also rumors that the lord imprisoned a lady who originally lived in the castle before his reign. Kairos can't help but ask why, but how could a fruit seller know that? Kairos got the apples while thinking this rumor was worth looking into. He asked the succubus to give him the pouch with money, but surprisingly she didn't have any money on her. Beticia asked her where did the bag with money go, to which she replied after thinking that the boy from earlier who stumbled into her took it. Kairos was feeling a bit awkward to keep the fruit seller standing, and he decided to get the money back first. Meanwhile, the boy who stole the money ran to the back alleyway where some shady guys were sitting in wait and asked him if he got anything in today's haul. The boy showed them the pouch with money, seeing which the bald guy with tattoos took it and mentioned it seems to be a good haul this time. The boy, who was just referred to as the kid number 3 by those guys, thought that thankfully he won't get hit today. But then the bald guy stopped the boy from leaving just like that by pulling his hair and said he still needed to go back to those people and steal more. The boy didn't expect these guys to be this shitty, while those guys only cared about getting more money, and they thought these guys must be travelers, who might have more money. He threatened the boy if he didn't get money, he would be hit like usual. Just then, a voice came, pointing out how smelly this area was. The goons asked out who was there, to which our girl Beticia replied she finally found the boy who stole the money. Kairos and Succubus were also with her, but instead of being scared, the shady guy approached Beticia and said she was quite a beauty with some braveness to come here. Beticia didn't hold back and charged a magic sphere to bind the guy with thunder magic and lift him up in the sky, followed by throwing him to the ground by face. She told the poor guy to be sorry for being lustful towards her in the next life. Now she demanded money back from the boy who stole from them, and at the same time, the other remaining members of the gangsters came. Along with them, there was the boss with Yakuza-style tattoos. He warned Beticia and others to think twice before messing with him. He signaled his men to surround those 3, and they did just that and cover them with iron bars as their weapons. Beticia wasn't fazed by them at all, and she asked how long they need to put up with this. Kairos told them they could go all out now, then Succubus and Slimes also came out to join the fight. Slimes went and blocked the enemy's nose and eyes to block their vision and breathing until they died. Beticia thought it was her chance to show her skills, but the Slimes handled the situation well enough. The slime brought back the pouch of money, and now the boy who stole before was remaining. Kairos went and asked the boy where he thought he was going. The boy cried for help as he thought he was going to die, but instead, Kairos asked him kindly if he knew anyone here. The boy didn't reply, and his silence means he does not know anybody and doesn't seem to have parents either. Kairos decided to take this boy to the castle and get his injuries treated. Beticia asked startled if they wouldn't kill him, and Kairos made it clear they will be providing that boy with plenty of food and a warm place to sleep. The boy couldn't believe all this and asked if it was for real. Kairos agreed but said that in exchange, the boy would have to make a deal with him. He reached out his hand towards the boy, and the boy in response accepted the handshake to make whatever the deal was. Suddenly, a bright light glowed from the handshake, and the boy fell unconscious as if planned by Kairos in advance. After that, Kairos had the Goblin Chief come over to take the boy to his Demon Lord's castle. The Goblin Chief also came over with bad news that the ogre had awakened from hibernation and had started to devour monsters. He requested Kairos to help his villagers. Kairos accepted the request and went all the way to the forest to deal with the ogre, along with Beticia. Beticia asked him again why he was letting that boy live like that, to which he replied that until now, there have been many demon lords who tried to take over the human world by force, but now he wishes to try taking a different route. He planned to sow discord from within the empire and slowly grow his own territory and size. For this plan to work, he needed a few humans by his side, and that boy was the first one. Beticia asked why bother doing all that when he could just wipe them out by force. Kairos just kept walking further without answering that question, which he already answered once. Meanwhile, in the human village, the succubus was flying around the sky in search of something, and that was when her eyes fell on shiny gems and jewelries. She took a dive down towards the place where gems were and planned to take these gems to her demon lord. Just then, she noticed there was a white-haired woman standing by the window, and she asked Succubus who she was. Succubus was surprised and asked her if she could really see her since she was supposed to be invisible. The white-haired girl could see her, and she got worried thinking a child shouldn't be out there at a dangerous spot. After saying that, she went away, while Succubus thought that was a really strange human. Then she remembered the reason she came here. Back in the Demon Lord's castle, Lilith was enjoying apples. Then she asked if Kairos managed to take over the ogre cave. Kairos replied it took them less than 3 minutes to capture the ogre. Beticia boasted it went without any problems thanks to her, and now Lilith asked if he was planning to go back to the humans' territory. Kairos stated he needed to do something about that, since he planned to let the humans destroy themselves without his interference. And as for the process of how, it was by organizing internal rebellion led by the nobles. Lilith gets what he plans to do, but Kara's had to think of where they could find a noble that would join them. Patricia recalled that fruit seller saying something about a young lady being kept hostage, so they might be able to get some help from there. Kairos didn't expect Patricia to think for once, and now he decided to wake up that boy and ask him some things. Kairos asked the boy for his name, to which he replied it was Jacob, and next Kairos asked if Jacob knew anything about the former lord's daughter in his village. Jacob replied the name of the young lady was Irina Astria, and she was old enough to be in her 20s. Jacob described her as a beautiful woman with silver hair and golden eyes, and she was well liked by everyone because she cared for even poor ones. But now it wasn't known what condition she was being held in by the new lord. After hearing that, the succubus mentioned she had seen someone like that earlier. Meanwhile, the real princess was currently in her cage like usual, and a knight came to give her usual meal and ask if she was all right. Irina said she was fine, and ever since she had been taken hostage, this was her first good meal, even though it was just dry bread and some porridge. The knight felt helpless as he couldn't help her ladyship even if he wanted to. Irina stated it wasn't anyone's fault that she was the eldest daughter and yet had no right to the throne, and now she doesn't have any choice but to wait to be sold either. The knight informed her brother was on a rampage ever since he took over the throne, and all the day he's either drinking alcohol or torturing villagers and dragging innocent women for his pleasure. Irina felt disgusted after hearing it, then the knight mentioned it would have been better if she were to be her lord. Irina told the knight to go back as it wasn't safe to stay here too long. The knight turned around and left, knowing staying would only cause trouble for the lady. After Irina hears everything, she can't imagine what the villagers must be suffering. She wished if there was a law that allowed women to be lords, it would be so much better. She wondered why she was so helpless and couldn't really do anything now. At that time, she heard a voice telling her it's a good thing she was feeling like this. Irina looked back and there was a mysterious portal. Kairos came out from the portal and gave her an apple, saying she'll never be full on such dry bread. Irina sensed this man was a demon and asked what he wanted from her. Kairos smirked as she was able to figure it out, making her as wise as he heard. He introduced himself formally as the demon lord of madness and greed. Kairos and the aura emitted by him made the ladyship get in her guard. Just then, Kairos closed in and asked if she wanted revenge. Irina was confused while he told her not to worry, as she would simply just need to make a deal with him and he'll give her what she wants. Irina straight up declined as she was not interested in making the deal with the devil. Hearing Kairos point out that she doesn't have any other choice now, so she should think about what will be the best course of action for her people and herself. After saying tempting statements, Kairos left the portal like he came and returned back to his office in the castle. As he stepped out, he praised Batisia for making such an awesome portal, but she mentioned anyone would be able to do that. She asked him why this whole process was so important to approach Irina like this. Kairos replied if he wants things to work out, he will have to gain trust first and make a deal with Irina. Batisia commented he looks like some dealer, and he just nods and takes a sip of his drink. Then Succubus asked Lord Kairos if he was thinking about killing Big Sister Irina. Kairos patted her and assured that he won't kill her, and they'll keep her alive even after taking over that human village. It made Succubus happy, while Kairos was indeed speaking the truth but with some intentions, that he would rather keep a good pawn like Irina under him to make use of her status. Meanwhile, Irina was lamenting over the choice presented by Kairos, while he was wishing to make good use of her. From the next day, Kairos released the ogre he captured into the village for a short time and made sure Irina was able to hear all the cries for help of the helpless people, but made sure not to kill them. Aside from that, the Lord was pissed off as he thought his safety was seriously at risk, while the knights were not able to handle this situation. General replied they were trying their best, but still an ogre was very hard to deal with. Lord didn't find it surprising, since ogres had the power to break through their defenses and shatter the gates with one blow. He didn't understand why something like that was roaming in their village. The general in suit replied they were currently trying to figure that out as well, but because of the dangerous situation, they can't afford to send more guards. The selfish Lord was pissed since he doesn't like anything that doesn't go his way. General explained that if they try to form a search party, none of them will survive against the ogre. But the selfish Lord didn't care how many of them died, and he used his authority to send most soldiers outside the walls to capture ogre, and the rest would defend the castle. General can't deny the orders of the Lord, and later on, just as he feared, the search party was slaughtered by the ogre. It also included the general vassal's own son. And now that things were taking a turn for worse, people started rebellions as they can't let this go on forever. They hated the Lord and his orders because at this rate, all of them were going to die. It was then Jacob called out those people and asked them to wait. He informed everyone that the young lady Irina, who took care of them, was still alive and was currently locked up inside the castle. Jacob's provoking people was part of Kairos' plan, and just as he expected, Irina began to hear the voices of villagers looking for her. She wanted to go to them, but with these chains, she can't go anywhere and do nothing but feel helpless. Karos arrived and asked her if she could hear the voices as the whole village looked desperately for her. He reached out his hand and asked if she would now be willing to sign a contract with him. Next morning at the demon lord Karos' castle, everyone was enjoying breakfast as usual, and the succubus was even drooling over it. Karos called for them to have a toast before eating, and they celebrated his first conquest of a human village. Beticia gave him the magic necklace as a present for his hard work, but Karos knew she gave it because it was heavy. She played dumb and smiled away while the goblin chief and Slime were getting along. Karos noticed the goblin chief seems to have gotten drunk, and that aside, Beticia asked Karos for what happened after he made an offer to Arena the second time. Karos narrated the scene from last night when in that cage of princesses he asked her what she was going to do, accept the contract or let people suffer like that. Arena accepted the deal with Karos and shook hands while promising that she would be on his side from now on. After that, Arena was released by Karos from her chains, and he also handled the guards for her. Arena went straight to the end of the castle wall to let people know that today was the day they would mark the end to their suffering. People recognized Arena right away after hearing her voice, and Arena convinced everyone to follow her and help the current lord to be thrown out of power. Succubus was so happy for big sister Arena, and Karos was glad his plan went smoothly. But then Lilith asked what about the rule that said women can't become lords. Karos mentioned it just so happens to be that the new emperor himself usurped the throne himself and made changes to that rule, allowing even women to become lords. Lilith was surprised Karos handled the situation so skillfully and thought that far ahead, but of course only Karos knows that even the emperor thing was a setup. Suddenly, Beticia sensed something and stood up strangely, which caught the attention of Karos, and he asked her if something was wrong. Beticia just ran straight outside to the gate, and when she was out, she saw a blonde woman in golden armor standing there, as if she wanted to enter this demon lord's castle. Beticia asked the blonde who she was, but the blonde woman remained quiet and determined about something. Beticia sensed that this human woman seems to have a lot more energy than a human should normally have. Just then, the blonde woman raised her sword to directly cast an attack at the castle. Karos arrived to ask just what was happening here, but he instead heard Beticia shout for him to dodge the attack. The blonde woman unleashed an immensely powerful light magic at the castle, and Beticia tried to block as much of the attack as she could with her shield magic. After the explosion settled down, Karos knew this woman could be a danger to them. Now the woman declared she was a hero Sinclair Secread, and she has come here to slay the demon lord. Beticia felt the tension because she knew she can't defeat the hero by herself. But in the very next second, Sinclair moves so fast that Beticia loses sight of her, and next time she appears right in front of Karos with a barrier casted around them. Karos was thinking this must be it for him, and it was questionable how the hero arrived here in the first place. Sinclair smiles and puts her sword inside, and thinking he will be cut any moment now, Karos reacted with a defensive stance. Just then, the blonde referred to Karos as a human and told him not to fear anymore, as she will protect him from the demons. Karos realized she thinks of him as a human because of the necklace, and now Sinclair was about to eradicate all the demons around them and bring peace. Karos pondered how they could get through this unscathed before that crazy strong hero flattened out everything, including his expensive castle. He gets an idea and starts acting frail, catching the edge of the hero's cape and requesting her to help before he collapses. She thought the demons must have done something to the poor guy, so she puts her sword down and prioritizes aiding him. Our boy kept acting like his breathing would stop any second now, and his acting came out realistic to the dumb hero. However, when the hero touched Karos, it did hurt him a little for real because of her pure holy energy. He requested Sinclair to take him to the human village right away, and given the delicate situation, Sinclair agrees and takes him away as fast as she could from there. Beticia shouts for Karos as she thought he had been taken away by the hero because she was powerless to protect him. Lilith tried to comfort her, saying they should just trust in Karos and wait for him. Meanwhile, some time passed and our boy found himself in an unrecognizable place. He figures the fact he's still alive means the hero didn't find out he was a demon, and furthermore, she seems to have brought him to her own room. Our guy knew he better escape while his head was on his shoulders, but the moment he opened the gate, he saw the Lady Irina having tea with the hero Sinclair. Sinclair was glad to see him awake, while Karos was trying to understand why Irina was with the hero. Irina pretended she was seeing this guy for the first time and asked if he was the one saved by Sinclair. Irina knew she couldn't reveal that this bastard was the greedy demon lord, and Sinclair replied with a yes and proceeded to ask his name. Karos nervously came up with a fake name, Beam, and Sinclair, asking why he was captured by the demon lord. Karos knows he can't afford any inconsistencies in his story, so he carefully responded that he was an adventurer who just liked to explore the world with his companions. But when they happened to pass near that demon lord's castle, they engaged in the battle against the demon lord, in which his companions ended up losing their lives while protecting him till the bitter end. Karos did a great acting while narrating the made-up story, and now he could only hope for the hero to believe it. But it seems he was worried for nothing, as Sinclair bumped her head into the table, trying to apologize by bowing and gave her a little concussion. She felt sorry for not arriving before, which could have saved his comrades' lives. Karos didn't expect this hero to be that much of a dumbass, and it just made it easier for him to use her. Now, Hero Sinclair asked Karos for anything, as she wanted to compensate for being late by fulfilling one of his wishes. Irina played along and said that as Lord, she will do the same as proposed by Sinclair. Karos gave it some thought, and he needed to ask something that would solve his current situation. He was relieved that he survived that, but it was a problem. Hero Sinclair already knows the whereabouts of his castle, so he wanted to find a way to keep the hero as far away from the demon castle as possible. He came up with something and requested Hero Sinclair to allow him to defeat the demon lord with his own power and avenge his comrades himself. Hero Sinclair was impressed by his brave request, and she granted it, but when our boy thought it went smoothly, the hero declared from today, she will train him herself to become stronger. Karos got out of one trouble only to end up in another. Then Sinclair pointed at him with a sword and mentioned that she could sense some demonic energy from him. Karos was worried, as she sensed it even though most of his demonic energy should be blocked by necklace. But the dumb hero just thought that Karos must have demonic energy because he was trapped by the demon lord before. She told Karos that he'll need to become stronger than anyone else to protect himself, in which case she decided to take him to the sun god's temple so he could also be blessed by the power of sun god and defeat the demon lord by himself. For Karos, that would be like stepping into his own death, so he tried to turn down the hero modestly, but in the end the hero ended up taking our boy out on their path to the sun god's temple. Moreover, our boy started panting after hours of walking, whereas the energetic hero patted him and said they only need to walk for 60 more days to reach their destination. In the journey, a part of our boy's soul got drained every day by the walking and eating with the hero, sleeping with her, touching him, and the holy energy draining his life. He was feeling blessed to be at least half human, otherwise just one touch from this stupid hero full of holy energy would have burned his skin. However, if this continues for some more days, Karos doesn't think he'll be able to last at all. Meanwhile, the hero seems to be enjoying all this, and she thought Bean was looking pale, so she used her ridiculous cooking skills to cook some medicine for him. Karos wondered how he could escape from this sun god maniac, and soon they arrived near their destination. Sinclair thought since Bean wasn't looking well, they would rest for today in this village, which was very near to the sun god temple. It was a village of sun god worshippers, and Karos knew this would be his last chance to escape. Sinclair went down and greeted the village chief, who had known Sinclair since she was a little girl. He asked her what brought her here, and they did the sun god greetings. The chief asked her who is this person next to her, to which she replied she was currently taking care of that man due to some circumstances, and tomorrow she'll take him to the sun god's temple. The village chief seemed unpleasant to hear that because he did not hold people not affiliated with the sun god in high regard. Sinclair asked the chief to prepare a room for Bean to stay, and the man obediently guided them to the room. As they walked through the village, Karos noticed everything was pretty ordinary about this place, but it was just so ordinary that it was suspicious. He noticed the shops and containers around were so clean as if they weren't even used. It felt like all of this was made for something specific, raising doubts in his mind, and he smirked knowing what was most likely happening in here. Later, Karos was taking some good rest, lying down on a bed after weeks of traveling outside. Then he heard a knock on the door and allowed the person to come in. It turned out to be the village chief, who personally came here to ensure if the guest had a good rest. Karos nodded to the question, then the guy served the soup they made for him. Karos was glad to get a good meal after so long, and right then the village chief thanked Karos for coming all the way. Karos mentioned he should be the one thanking for such good hospitality, as he recovered his strength thanks to this rest. The chief began stating that the hero was a noble and strong person, but he thinks the hero could be a bit naive for just about anyone. So in that case, he told Karos that if the hero happens to turn against him and try to harm him, he should just play along and get paid for his acting and taking risks. He asked if Karos would accept the deal, but Karos had no intention of going along with that. So he declined the offer and said he was just an adventurer who seeks adventure than safety and money. The village chief warns our boy he'll regret not accepting his offer, and he turns to go back, leaving him here. That night, people suddenly started calling out for Hero Sinclair, and they reported there seems to be some problem. She asked them what happened, and the chief informed her that some bandits have appeared in the village and they need her help. Sinclair held her sword and prepared to go out to protect citizens and serve justice upon those bandits. She was praised by the people, and they sent her off with hopes and cheers. However, Karos noticed they were near the sun god's temple, so it was hard to think anyone would be reckless enough to cause trouble here. That was when he caught on to some patterns and understood exactly what was going on. He went out and told Sinclair that he'll also come along with her. On the way, Karos recalled all the stories he was told by Sinclair, which said that she was an orphan from birth and she was raised by the people of this village. They only taught her how to fight for humans and used her title as the sun god's hero, even if it was all out of their own selfishness. They just turned an orphan into a puppet to protect themselves, and she became an ignorant and sturdy shield for them. That became the sole reason for Sinclair's existence, and she was made to believe only that. However, now Kairos wonders what will happen if one shows a child trapped in a fairy tale just what the reality was outside of it. Meanwhile, some mercenaries were counting gold coins, and they couldn't believe they received 20 gold for dealing with one woman. The group had two bosses, a bald guy and his little brother, among which the little brother felt suspicious and wondered what kind of woman was worth that much money. The bald guy didn't care since they already got paid, and after this job, they won't have to worry about making a living anymore. Soon his men reported the woman had arrived, while the village chief showed Sinclair the bandits who invaded their village, referring to the mercenaries. The bald guy thought she was pretty, but it's a shame they will have to kill her. Sinclair didn't care about anything except killing these bad guys, while the bald guy also charged in without knowing just how dangerous the situation he was putting himself in. Just before he showed up before Sinclair, he lost sight of her and wondered what's going on. He couldn't spot where she was anymore, and suddenly Sinclair showed up behind Baldy and jabbed a holy punch to the guy's back. Baldy was talking to air, and he went falling straight on the ground with a thud. Kairos had an idea these bandits were actually just some mercenaries, and Sinclair was impressed to knock down a huge guy with just one hand. Baldy was unconscious and needed immediate medical attention, which led the other boss, Baldy's little brother, to order everyone to charge and save the boss. Kairos claimed he will now handle the rest and wanted to show Sinclair how he will resolve this peacefully. Now Kairos clapped to get everyone's attention and said he'll give them one last chance before they die. He asked them a simple question to think with their dumb minds: who could wear golden armor, have golden hair, and even the sun's sword? The mercenaries immediately connected all the dots and realized it could only be the sun god's hero Sinclair, and it explains why their boss was knocked down by one hit. Next, Kairos asked the brown-haired guy who hired them to kill the hero, and if they answer honestly, their lives will be spared. The mercenaries all bow down to Sinclair, and the boss honestly answered that they were not actually bandits, but just lowly mercenaries. They apologized for not recognizing her quicker, and as for the person who hired them, it was the village chief there, who offered them 20 gold coins to kill a woman. He claimed that the chief had been hiring them for a long time to pretend to be bandits. The chief was trembling as his truth was exposed, and he tried to act like he never did anything like that. Sinclair also thought the village chief would never lie like that, and why would he bother deceiving her? Kairos mentioned Sinclair must have heard only one side, and for once she should hear both sides. Just then, the brown-haired mercenary took out a letter and said it was the evidence that they were hired. He explained that both sides did actually destroy the original request letter, but they had made a copy just in case. Kairos was impressed by how meticulous the guy was despite being a low-ranked mercenary. Now, Kairos handed the letter to Sinclair to check, while he mentions the power of a god depends on the strength of their believers, so in the end, they used an orphan like Sinclair at birth to build the power of the sun god. Moreover, they also used Sinclair as their shield under the disguise of sun god. The moment Sinclair heard all this, she dropped her sun's sword and felt extremely guilty at the realization that she had been killing innocent people all this time. She can't count how many humans she killed under the belief she was doing the right thing, and it turns out she had become a great sinner while following those lies. Kairos taught the grieving hero that the world flows in the opposite direction to what she believes. He took out his magic-blocking necklace and declared his identity as not being, but a demon lord. Sinclair sensed his demonic energy and didn't expect him to be the demon lord. The mercenaries felt the atmosphere becoming heavier, while Kairos declared himself identified as the demon lord of madness and grief. Everyone was confused about what was happening, and Kairos smiled as he told them it was exactly as he said. He revealed that he used the magic pendant to conceal his identity, and now that the villagers found out he was a demon lord, they were scared for their lives and requested the hero to vanquish the evil demon lord. The chief told her to remember the words of the Pope, and Sinclair picked up her sword with a lot of doubts in her mind. Kairos called out her name and said those who exploited others should be punished, and those who do not uphold divine laws were always these followers of God themselves. Especially that village chief over there who stooped so low to use an orphan for their selfish plans and raised her as a hero with lies. Kairos told her honestly that he wasn't interested in killing humans, and he even freed Arena, the former lord's daughter. On top of that, he also saved the lives of these 20 mercenaries, who were supposed to be killed by now in the hands of the hero. So now Kairos questions Sinclair, who she believes to be truly righteous now. He told her to choose for herself what she thinks is right. Sinclair recalled the words of the Pope that the followers of Sun God don't lie, and the order of Sun God was a force of good. She was taught that a demon was an evil entity, they must be eradicated. Sinclair thought if everything she believed was a lie, it was the same as her whole world shattering apart. She broke into tears, trying to think just what she should do now. At the same time, the other knights from the sun god's temple arrived and they surrounded Kairos from everywhere. They came here after sensing the demonic energy, and now the knights told the demon to surrender himself peacefully. Kairos just played along with them, and all the knights gave all the credit for capturing Demon Lord to Sinclair, since they needed to keep her belief as hero strong. Later, at the sun god's temple, Kairos was tied to a wooden stick, and there were knights with fire torches in their hands, which was supposed to be for the execution of Kairos by burning him alive. Soon the Pope arrived and ordered for the Demon Lord to be executed in the glory of Sun God. Everyone cheered to the Sun God, and as the Pope took a sip of the drink at this happy occasion, Kairos remarked these were all tiresome formalities. His voice was meant for Sinclair, as he mentioned that humans do seem to love these kinds of things. Now the priest stated they would first hear the hero's final oath and proceed to execute the Demon Lord afterwards. Sinclair climbed the stairs and room out the book she was supposed to read the speech from. She declared that as a servant of the sun god, she swore to eradicate all the demons in this world. After the final oath, the Pope signaled for the execution to begin. The knights lit the fire below Kairos, and just then Sinclair asked the Pope if they were truly the beings of righteousness as they claimed to be. She also questioned if that demon lord over there was truly an entity of evil like he says, and was the order of sun god, truly an order of righteousness. Pope couldn't believe Sinclair was the one doubting it all, and just then she threw the holy scripture on the ground, saying she didn't know what was right or wrong anymore. Kairos smiled as he was expecting this to happen, and the scene of holy scripture being thrown on ground came out extremely shocking to everyone present there. The Pope told Hero they needed to talk for a moment, but right then the holy barrier around the sun god's temple began to shake and cracks formed in it. The Pope didn't understand what was happening here, and the knights reported they were under attack by the demons. The Pope looked up in the sky, where a face emerged from the crack, which was just Beticia, who came to free Kairos. She asked him if he had his fun until now, as she barged into the sun god's temple, while excluding an overwhelming magic power. She landed near Kairos, and the Pope was angered by a demon defiling the land of the gods. He ordered the knights to purge this demon, but Beticia didn't faze at all from the sight of dozens of knights coming for her. She wasn't going to be scared of some dogs of God or whatever, and casted a lightning spell to throw them all straight into a near-death state. Sinclair ran downstairs towards Kairos, and he asked her if she would like to make a deal. Sinclair didn't get what he could mean by that. Then Kairos told her if she joins him, he will ensure everyone's safety, including those mercenaries captured by the knights. Sinclair was very much confused as to what to do. Then Kairos told her to think of it as a deal, not a temptation of evil, since it wasn't bad to save the innocent any time. Sinclair felt shameless, as she admitted to be deceived by Kairos as well. Kairos told her that was just how demon lords were and asked her what she will do now. Sinclair responded it doesn't matter and proceeded to free him from the ropes, saying she had already made her decision before he asked. Beticia arrived beside Kairos, and Sinclair took an aggressive stance against the knights. She charged at them and declared she was no longer their ally, so they should step back right away. Beticia then threw a black box to Kairos' direction, saying he might need this. Kairos felt pathetic to be relying on luck even at the end, and he opened the black box, declaring the random monster to come out. Beticia recalled when she was heading out for Kairos' direction, Lilith told her to wait and gave her the black box, saying it was a serve from the great demon lord Asura. Asura decided to help out a bit given the situation and gave this box for free without any points consumption this time. Beticia accepted the box and took it along to deliver it to Kairos later. Now Kairos summoned a random monster from the black box, and suddenly, a large shadow formed over the knights. They saw a twin-headed ogre appear out of nowhere. Kairos was glad to finally see something useful, after which the hero freed the mercenaries and asked them to quickly get on the ogre. The Pope was trying to instruct knights to catch them, but they couldn't do anything against the hero and demon lord. And before they take any action, Beticia charges her magic power and opens a huge portal for them to go through. She pointed out to Kairos that he was making her work too much, and he promised to listen to all her complaints later, so just hang in there a bit longer. Beticia flustered and nodded while damning him at the same time. Meanwhile, Sinclair looked back and saw the knights thanking her in their last meeting for everyone she had done as a hero. Sinclair also bid goodbye to Pope and others as the portal closed. First off, they went to Irina's town, and she was glad to see he came back alive. Kairos answered it was sure to happen, while the group of mercenaries was extremely happy to return alive and safely to a human village. Irina asked who these people were. Kairos told her they were some mercenaries, which he hoped could become a good force for this village after some training. Irina thanked him for adding their forces, and now Kairos returned back to his castle with others. Succubus greeted him with tears, since the way he left was realized worryingly. Lilith also greeted the Lord along with others, and Kairos was happy to see everyone was safe. However, he asked Lilith how she found out where Sun God Temple was. Lilith replied she was able to see everything through that pendant, which turned out to be the lifesaver. Beticia pointed out how Karos loves to attract trouble every time. Karos couldn't respond as the succubus started eating his hairs again, while Sinclair was observing the cheerful environment here and wondering if this was what real comrades and family were like. Then she called out Karos to confirm his name, and he agreed he was indeed the demon lord of madness and greed. Sinclair mentioned that she always thought demon lords were purely evil beings, and the demon lords she encountered always tried to kill her without conversing. So she thinks Karos was different from other demon lords, and she would love to observe him more. She looked forward to working with him and reached out her hand, and Karos shook it back, looking forward to working with her the same. However, Karos was still troubled by touching her because of the painful holy power. Now Sinclair decided to commemorate their unity by cooking for everyone today, and Karos begged her she didn't have to do it. But Sinclair did it anyway and cooked up a horrible meal, which Karos recalls as a nightmare, since he had to eat it during the whole journey last time. Beticia openly asked if they could even eat this, and Sinclair started chasing everyone to give them a taste of her meal. A few days later, the former mercenaries and now soldiers were in the training grounds, and the one training them today was none other than Beticia. She kept testing their endurance by exerting heavy magic, in front of which they lasted for about 20 minutes. She stated it wasn't bad for a human, and if they keep at it, they will surely be high grade soon. Sinclair liked the sound of it and mentioned it must be difficult to train soldiers alone, so she also decided to help them out. She promised to train them as best she can, so they could prevent attacks from any other villages in future. Lilith saw the scene and asked Karos if they should do something about hero training the soldiers. Karos corrected her that Sinclair was a former hero, and Lilith mentioned Sinclair was still a hero despite that, and she was also a human who can't get along with demons because of her divine magic. Karos figured that Sinclair was currently more of a fallen hero, so they won't have to worry about her loyalty, except for some other issues. Sinclair was the type to hug to increase camaraderie, but apparently her touch hurts other demons and they run away from her. Karos had suffered from it firsthand and knows the divine power was a pain after all. He asked Lilith how many points they have left, to which she replied he has around 10,000 points. Karos was surprised as he didn't think they would increase so fast. Then Lilith mentioned the points skyrocketed when Sinclair joined their side. Karos asked her exactly when did these points increase, and Lilith stated his accomplishments, from occupying the goblin village, subjugating the lord, and helping Arena take over the village, and when Sinclair broke away from the sun god to be on his side. Karos realized these points were given like some scores for his actions as a demon lord, in which case he has a better understanding now what to do from here. He told Lilith they would be returning to the demon castle now to spend some points to solve their problems. Karos arrived in the subspace and he can't ever get used to this weird-looking place. Then, to his surprise, Sinclair also comes in and mentions that strangely, she doesn't sense any demonic energy used to make this subspace. Karos was startled to see her in here and asked how she was able to enter, since only his subordinates could enter. She replied that came here just because she could for some reason. Karos thought it must be another mess-up of the demon god. And that aside, Sinclair mentioned hearing all demon lords have a special power, and asked out of curiosity what power Karos have, since he summoned that twin-headed ogre before. Karos replied with an ashamed voice, "It's Gacha." She couldn't believe what she heard and asked again, and this time Betiza answered it was really just Gacha, making fun of his hilarious ability. Now Karos went to the box room, and the display shows his points being 10,000. He noticed there were 2 box options this time. The white boxes with 100 points gave items, while the black ones gave monsters. Karos asked when did the black boxes were added. Lilith replied it was a service for the great demon lord, and now whenever he wants to open a new type of box and options, he'll need 5,000 points. Karos thought he should increase his options, so he could have a more specific choice of boxes he'll need based on the situation. He told Lilith to open the new box, and she began to chant a spell process to unlock next box options. Once she was done, Karos saw it was a wooden box with a cost of 500 points. Lilith asked him what he wants to do with it now, and Karos wasn't sure about going all in, so he just bought 8 of them. He brought those boxes to his room and started opening them. Sinclair was still finding it strange to see his ability really was gacha. Karos told her to be quiet and proceeded to open the wooden box. Inside the wooden box, Karos saw it contained a voucher to receive a hug from a passing demon. Karos didn't find this piece of paper of any use or containing any magic. And as for what it said about receiving a hug, Karos turned to Lilith to ask how this works. The voucher activated and Lilith started feeling something and her body started moving on its own. Karos told her to wait, but she couldn't stop and ended up giving him a good long hug. Karos couldn't bring himself to break the hug, so Succubus came in to separate them out of envy. Beticia was pissed off at the demon god for plotting something like this, and even Sinclair hated it. Karos felt like he was targeted for some reason. He argued he wasn't happy with his ability either. Now he went on to open the other boxes, but even after opening all of them, Kairos didn't find many useful vouchers. Then Lilith mentioned the voucher for renovation seemed useful, since renovating the castle was quite expensive. Kairos agreed with that, and they also needed more rooms for everyone, so it was a good thing this voucher will save money. He asked Lilith to open the gate to the demon world, and Sinclair wanted to tag along with him as well. Betitia refused, saying that a human wouldn't be of any help in the demon realm, so instead she would go. However, Kairos turned down both of them and said he would be going alone this time, as he has some other things to take care of. Later in the demon realm, when the sky is red with a crimson moon, Kairos first went to a place where the most famous renovation craftsman lived. He went to the master apprentice, Luberia Brondry, who had been a top alumni in the Demon Academy in the same year as Kairos. She greeted Kairos, and he greeted back, saying it's been a long time. Luberia mentioned he seems to have become a proper demon lord now, but she doesn't have much time and would talk later. Kairos apologized for doing this, but he used the voucher for renovation on her, which made her body move on its own, leaving the current work she was on. Kairos told her to make sure to do a great job at renovation, and this pissed her off because she was basically forced to work like this. Kairos saw her running straight away to work on his castle's renovation, and he started to like the vouchers now. After that, Kairos had other plans, and he walked ahead to the next place. His next destination was the Intelligence Organization, where the old snake dwells, and most people might not know about it because it exists at the edge of the demon realm. Kairos fully trusted the top-class intelligence of that place, which was because the one running it was none other than the former Great Demon Lord who runs it as a hobby. Kairos entered a shabby place and saw an old lady sitting by a candle. Kairos told the person they still seemed to have the nasty hobby of transforming into an old woman. This person was actually the former Great Demon Lord, Naviros, and after Kairos called him out like that, Naviros transformed to his original form and greeted Kairos, stating it's been a long time since they met. He asked Kairos what was the purpose of his coming this time. The former Great Demon Lord, Naviros, also known as the Old Snake, asked Kairos if he came here because he was curious about Betisia's subordinates and their land. Kairos didn't have to say anything and nodded. Naviros was right. Kairos was worried about Betisia's subordinates because they had the power to crush his foundation. So for both Kairos and Betisia's sake, Kairos needed to know their current state, and he often saw how worried Betisia looked while looking at the sky, as if she was thinking of her past subordinates. Kairos bowed down to Naviros to request for information, because he knew it wouldn't be easy to obtain. Naviros laughed and said he actually knows about it already, but it was well known that everything has a price on it. He asked Kairos what he would be offering in return. Kairos seems to have just the thing that will satisfy the exchange. Sometimes laughs of Naviros could be heard from the outside, since many hands seemed to be tickling him with feathers all over. Naviros exclaimed to Kairos that he can't treat a retired Great Demon Lord like this, but Kairos had to say sorry, because he will still get the information out even though he got nothing to offer in return, except for using this voucher to force him. There was a voucher to make any demon talk, and Kairos asked Naviros again if he'll answer his question now. Naviros gave up and requested him to stop, after which he replied that Betisia's past subordinates weren't looking for her. Kairos asked if they were still defending their territory or if they planned to rebel. Naviros replied they were currently defending the territory and answering the rest was his jurisdiction. Kairos understands, and he thanked Lord Naviros for the information. He got up and said he'll see him again next time. Naviros almost jumped to hear Kairos will be back because every time he comes, he screws him over like he did just now. Kairos starts to leave, and Naviros mentioned that Kairos have grown up a lot from that little kid he used to be. Kairos asked if he was reminiscing the past now, but then Naviros changed the topic and asked Kairos if he still remembers his best friend from when he was a kid, who also had named Sinclair. Naviros told him not to think that Sinclair could be the same fallen hero Sinclair at his castle. Kairos smiles and says he knows that because he abandoned her in the past due to circumstances. Naviros recalls he also did something similar by dethroning himself and appointing Astrea as the next Great Demon Lord. However, now he was curious after seeing Kairos choosing a different path than him. Kairos said he was just stating the obvious, in which case Naviros asked him a question. What does he really want for himself? Kairos smiled and replied it was also too obvious, because he wanted nothing other than world peace. After he left, Naviros felt amused by Kairos' reply, and he really has grown up a lot. Naviros still recalls the time when he met Kairos when he was just a poor kid, and even the first time they met, Kairos asked if they could make a deal. Since then, Naviros has looked after him, and now he plans on paying Astrea a visit as well. Meanwhile, Kairos was surprised when he came back and saw his fully renovated castle, which looked nothing like when he was here before. Everything from floor to ceiling and lamps was lavish and premium looking, and Lilith informed him that now there were 5 floors in the demon castle, with 5 rooms on every floor, and here they have a large central hall as well. Kairos was surprised to hear they have 25 rooms now, then Betisia told him not to be so surprised because the architectural skills of demons have been amazing since history. Lilith mentioned that everyone seems to be enjoying the new renovated castle as well, but Karas thinks it might be a little too much. But the only thing mattered was that everyone liked it. Now the architect Liberia came downstairs and informed the bastard demon lord that she was all done with work. Karos praised her for the work, and he figured that the demon command receipts must be quite powerful, so he'll have to be careful in the future. Liberia came and remarked that she didn't expect a weakling like him to become a demon lord, and not just that, she mentioned that whenever demons get together, all they talk about is him, and sometimes even that bub princess also talks about him. From the bub princess, Karos recalled she was a girl with green hair, and he doesn't get why she talks about him. Liberia mentioned she might be interested in him, but anyways, Karos doesn't care about the people from the demon world. Liberia stated there was a reason as to why they stay there, because most of the demons that have come out to the human world are dead. Karos was reminded of how dangerous it is to be out here in the human world. Liberia walked off and told him to take care just in case something happens. Now Succubus said they should tour their new demon castle, and others also liked the idea. Meanwhile, Karos went to have some tea with Beticia, and he asked her out of nowhere if she was still nervous and worried if her brother and sister, like subordinates, would betray her. Beticia denied she wasn't worried at all, since they were her family, but her looks says clearly she was nervous. Beticia can't hide it from her face, and Karos said he was also worried about that, so he went to the intelligence organization to get some information about them. Beticia realized now what other work he had in the demon realm, and to think he did it for her made it feel special. Karos informed her that her subordinates didn't betray her, and they were still in the demon realm, waiting for her. Beticia was very happy and satisfied to hear that, and she thanked Karos for checking that up. She promised him when she regains her powers, she will surely pay back for this favor. Just then, Lilith came over to report to the Lord about something. Karos asked her what could it be this time, and suddenly, Arena came running through the door to state they were in trouble. Karos learned that a territorial war could start at any moment, and Arena showed him the letter of threat she received, saying she has 1 week to put everything back in order, or she will be punished heavily by the lord of another territory, Stuk of Isaac. Karos didn't like the arrogance of this guy, and Arena told him that man was the King Isaac from the neighboring estate. Karos suspected there might be some mastermind behind this, and Arena already found out the mastermind's identity was Count Harida. Karos asked if that person had any relations with demons, but it couldn't be confirmed, so the issue at hand was Arena's territory being at a disadvantage if a war occurred. She mentioned the enemy territory has more troops and weapons, and if they were to engage in a head-on battle, Arena's army would perish. Karos mentioned that demons can't be involved directly in human fights, so on the surface, Arena will have to take care of her own affairs. However, Karos didn't want to lose either Arena or her kingdom, so he thought hard about what to do, then came up with just the perfect idea. Karos mentioned they could make some use of those mercenaries now, and since they were trained by Sinclair and Beticia, they should be strong enough for a mission now. He called in one of the leaders of the mercenary group, the younger brother of the bald guy, and put him in charge of this mission. Karos housed him because he was a little smarter and sharper than his elder brother. The brown-haired guy doesn't get what mission they will get, but he still thinks it might be better if the demon lord or Lord Arena would lead them instead. Karos stated that as a demon he cannot interfere in human affairs, whereas Arena was locked up for a long time before, so she doesn't have enough knowledge to deal with this problem. However, he declared she'll still be in charge after the mercenary boss, so she learned something as well. This way, everyone could trust each other, and the guy understood the point Karos was making. Now he asked him what his mission was and what role he would need to play. Arena took out a map to discuss the strategy she had in mind. On the map, she pointed at a spot by the river and stated her plan, but the mercenary boss refuted her strategy of trying to wipe out the enemy's large army with a smaller army of hers. Arena didn't exactly get his point until the guy explained that the enemy had enough forces that could scatter around and attack from the sides, which would really bring the numbers into play, at which the enemies already had a huge advantage. So direct confrontation was by no means possible, and besides, this tactic only works on cliff terrain. If they tried it on a flat terrain, they would be just heading to their deaths willingly. Karos looked at Arena with sympathy. Then she asked the mercenary what they should do in that case. The guy replied if it were him, he would directly aim for the king with all the force. He stated since the enemy's army was larger, the best way to win was to target the king right off the bat and capture victory. Karos liked the idea and praised the guy, and he entrusted him with both the command of troops and the tactics as well. The guy accepted the duty given to him, then Karos asked him for his name over handshake. The guy thought Karos might already know it, while Karos realized he didn't learn anyone's name because they were insignificant to him. The brown-haired man introduced himself as Vivaldi and mentioned his older brother's name was Thor. Vivaldi mentioned that his brother would be a big help in the battle, so he will keep him at the front line. Karos wished them to do their best on this mission, and a week later they formed an army, and Arena declared they must defeat the enemy to defend their land. The mercenaries lead the army, and everyone heads into a heated battle against the enemy's army. They fought with commendable courage, and even Arena joined them with her archery skills. The mercenaries kept cutting through the enemy soldiers to open up a path to their king, and with Thor on their side, their momentum was like an unstoppable force as he crushed almost everybody he faced head-on. Kairos could see that despite being smaller in numbers, Arena's army completely outclassed the enemy's army in terms of skills. Meanwhile, the enemy king was enjoying grapes in his royal courtroom. Isaac was sure his army would surely win, so he felt the need to go there himself. The general came and asked the king what he was planning to do once they captured the enemy's territory. Isaac stated he will start with extorting taxes to pay more to his soldiers, and also clear out all the other neighboring estates which have proved to be nuisances for him. He was backed by the Count Hareda, so he wasn't worried about the cleanup. And lastly, the king recalls that the Lord Arena of the other country was quite beautiful, so he will make sure to enjoy her in the end. Just then, the door of the royal courtroom was knocked violently, which made the king stand up alarmed and wonder what happened. A soldier came in and reported to the king they were in trouble, and the enemy forces were coming straight for the king's head. The guy leading Arena's forces was Thor, the mercenary captain, and even though he got surrounded by 4 soldiers, he remained unfazed. King Isaac ordered him to lay down his weapons and surrender if he wanted to live, but Thor refused to know what surrender means at all. He swung around his battle axe at the soldiers and wiped them like bread one after another. The king soon feared for his life, so he took the helmet from the general to cover his head and throwed the cape to make a run for his life. Thor spotted the king making an escape, so he grabbed the king by his shoulder and asked where he was going so desperately. Thor didn't waste time in stupid long battle and beheaded the king Isaac at once. Thor mocked by saying he can't believe the king was this weak, as he almost thought it was in disguise. At that time, Vivaldi came and told Thor it was against the law to kill nobles like that. Kairos asked Arena what happens if one breaks the law, to which she replied that it means going against the Count Hareda. For now, the soldiers of King Isaac's country surrendered and begged for their lives. It claimed to be just some poor people who were exploited by the Lord. The soldiers have heard of the rumors that the neighboring village was peaceful and nice to live in, so that was why they wished for Arena to become their new lord. Kairos asked Arena what she thinks, since it was a great opportunity to double their country's size. Arena takes up the duty and mentions she'll be busy for a while then. Soldiers thank their new lord for showing mercy, and they hope for a better future for their people. Kairos was glad the issue was resolved, and they also managed to double Arena's territory. They also increased the number of humans that Kairos the demon lord could control. But all these events brought an even bigger trouble that Kairos was afraid of. Vivaldi came running with another black letter, and Arena stated she already had many letters to respond to. But he mentioned this one was different and needed utmost importance, and when she checked where the letter come from, she understood the emergency, because this letter was yet another threat, and this time it came directly from the Count Hareda, saying this was her really last chance to save her life by surrendering everything to him. Arena was expecting the Count Hareda to make a move, but she didn't expect it to be this quickly. Kairos asked if this Count Hareda was really that great among humans, to which she replied it wasn't like that, but the difference in Count Hareda's army was enormous compared to theirs, even when they had armies combined with King Isaac's army. Kairos wondered if he should use Batisia as a spy, then Vivaldi asked Arena to read another letter that just came in. She noticed this one had a royal seal, and the letter turned out to be an invitation from the prince for the upcoming ball. Arena told this to Kairos, and he didn't expect for the prince of the whole empire to reach out like this. One day after the ball, Arena got ready in a beautiful dress, and Demon Lord Kairos became her partner for this. He dressed in the party's theme in a formal suit and a face mask, but Arena was confused why he came here alone without others. Kairos had a long story behind it, as when he mentioned the ball to others, Succubus was jealous, while Kairos was only interested in getting to know this prince since he got a higher status than that Count Hareda. Succubus wanted to go as well, but Kairos refused to take her with him. Batisia and Lilith were also interested in going to this ball, and obviously, Sinclair also wanted to go there with the excuse of protecting Kairos from any potential danger. Kairos denied, as he can't take everyone along with him, and they can't be sure when the Count Hareda might attack the territory, so others need to stay here to protect it. Everyone had objections, but Kairos just requested them to cooperate with him. Arena remarked they all love him a lot, and Kairos claimed to know it already, since he was too good to not be liked. They went to the ball, and though the whole place was surely quite luxurious, but Kairos didn't think it was much different from a ball in the demon realm. Soon, the Prince Adolf came to greet Arena, and she thanked him for inviting them to such a great ball. Adolf said the party had just begun, so they were free to enjoy it to their heart's content. It was then a person with a status higher than most came to greet the Highness, and Adolf happily accepted the greeting from Count Hareda. Arena felt it could be bad to stay here instead of it going now. But it seems the Count Hareda had something to tell the prince, and he informed the prince that Arena was involved in a territorial war recently. Prince Adolf claimed to already know about it, and also that they won that war. Harada mentions that the prince must also know then that Irina has murdered the opposing lord, Stukov Isaac. He complained that she dared to break the law of killing nobles and asked the prince how the lowly commoners would think of nobles. So for these reasons, he requested the price to punish that woman for dishonoring the nobles. Karos could hear everything, and he damned that bastard count for blabbering his mouth like that, and wondered how the prince would respond to this now. The prince Adolf smiled and said he made his decision, after which he announced that from today onwards, Count Harada was no longer a noble. Everyone was shocked by such a big announcement, and the whole place got quiet, unlike a party. Count Harada was taken aback by this announcement, and when asked why, Prince Adolf said since Count Harada can't tolerate nobles to be disgraced, and he simply doesn't need to be one anymore, problem solved. Harada asked the prince if he was joking, but the prince had determination in his eyes as he asked if it looks like it. Karos was enjoying the scene from the side, and Prince Adolf called out for Count Rabaf to step forward. Count Rabaf was an old man with specs, and he seems to be way more elegant and graceful than Harada ever was. Prince declared that from today, the House of Harada no longer exists, and all their lands would now belong to Count Rabaf, and he could use them as he see fit. Rabaf was left speechless by that announcement, while Harada begged the Highness to stop this farce here. Just then, Prince Adolf's loyal knight stepped forward and banned Count Harada from approaching the prince any closer than this. Prince Adolf's loyal knight wielded the Empire's sword, which commands the highest level of respect from everyone in the Empire. The knight pointed his sword at Count Harada to keep him from approaching the Highness, while Prince Adolf stated that everything Harada had was granted by His Majesty, his father's mercy, so if he dares to speak so arrogantly to the prince like earlier, he had the power to seize all of that at any time. Harada dropped to the floor and begged the prince for one more chance, but the Prince Adolf didn't care anymore and just told his knight to take this man away. The guard knights came and escorted Harada out of the castle, after which the prince snapped and told the musicians to keep playing the music and resume the party. Nobody expected that Prince Adolf would be dropping such a bomb today, and now the nuisance was gone, he was at peace. Irina came to thank the prince for his consideration, but the prince in response said he would like to have a conversation in his room later. Irina was surprised and asked if the prince meant just her alone, but the prince declined and said he was referring to the demon lord pretending to be her servant over there. Later, Karos went to the Prince Adolf's room, and the prince seemed to be waiting for him for some time. Adolf asked Karos to pour himself a drink, and he didn't mind or showed any caution in accepting it. Prince asked how could he trust in him so easily to drink without caution, to which Karos replied it wasn't about trust, but he just knows the prince have the great empire's sword with him, so he know the prince wouldn't bother killing him with poison. Prince Adolf liked Karos' smartness, and they proceed to toast the drinks and take sips. In the middle, Prince Adolf claimed to have known about Karos ever since the Sun Temple incident, and he also knows he was quite clever. Karos deduced it means the prince has been secretly watching him, and now he asked Karos for his name while offering a hand. Karos accepted a handshake like a gentleman and introduced himself boldly as the demon lord of madness and greed, Karos. Prince liked his unique title, but Karos came straight to business and said it was about time for Prince Adolf to tell him why he called him here. Adolf figured Karos would be direct, and he came out clear that he wanted to make a deal with him. Surprisingly, the deal was simple, which was for Karos to handle the imperial documents for Prince Adolf, since he was sick of paperwork. Karos laughed at the demand made by the prince, and he asked if the prince really thinks a demon lord like him would work under him. Prince Adolf smirked and claimed that he happened to know where Karos' demon castle was located, which caught his attention at once. Prince Adolf said with his power, he could keep Karos' castle hidden from the Empire and other humans as well. Karos recalled that right now his castle was heavily concealed by Lilith's barrier, when the sun god's followers were searching for it day and night, but they didn't know its exact location yet. So if Prince Adolf truly knows the location of his castle, and if he decides to launch an attack on it with the Empire's sword, it would surely be disastrous for him. Now the Prince Adolf simply said if Karos wanted to protect his subordinates, he better take this deal and work for him. Karos knew this was a direct threat, and he admitted the prince had the guts to say it to a demon lord's face. Karos thought it over and accepted the deal with Prince Adolf, after which he began handling the documents on Prince Adolf's behalf. In the next 20 days, whenever he was done with a batch of documents, Karos thought he would get to rest for a bit, but right then another batch of documents would come. The knight would just place more and more documents and take his leave. Karos was troubled by so much work, to the point that he felt abused now. Karos didn't expect his fate to unveil like this, and he noticed one time when the king was dealing with Harada, who still begged the prince for mercy and returned his lands. Prince Adolf asked him why he was complaining to him when it was Count Rabaf who took his land. Harada said frustrated it was the Highness who gave the order, but Adolf replied he just gave them command, and the one who took it was Count Rabaf, so if Harada wants it back, he would have to go to Count Rabaf and ask for it. Harada was pissed off at this point and boiling with anger, but he only understood while shooting a glare at Prince Adolf. Meanwhile, our boy was feeling damned as he was the demon lord, not a servant to work like this. He was pissed off at why that damn prince gets to play all day while he does his work. Karos heard a knock on the door and he allowed the person to come in. It was Prince Adolf's loyal knight and he informed Karos that his today's schedule had changed a bit. He requested Demon Lord Karos to follow him and later on, Karos ended up riding a carriage with the prince as his company. He asked the prince if they were going to see the emperor and Adolf asked him to refer to the emperor as his majesty. Karos shrugged off the honors and asked why he was coming along with the prince to this family meeting of his. Prince Adolf replied it was because Karos was intimidating and he would serve as a good shield when his siblings tried to bother him. Karos was feeling like a servant again, then the prince asked him straight up if he would like to quit being the demon lord and join him instead. Karos turned him down saying it wasn't time for jokes, but the prince was quite serious about it. After some time, the carriage stopped all of a sudden, and the prince wondered what happened. His knight informed him that an enemy has appeared, and Karos seems to have an idea it was going to happen. He knew right away when he saw that rebellious look in Haraida's eyes that sooner or later he would bare his fangs at the prince. The prince got down the carriage asking what's going on, and he questioned Haraida why he was blocking their carriage. Haraida came here with a dozen knights, and he claimed that he decided to be a madman to deal with a madman like the prince. He emitted demonic energy from him, and Karos seems to be sure of a demon lord's involvement in this. He wondered which demon lord Haraida brought with him, and to his surprise, Haraida seems to have made a deal with a total of 5 demon lords. The demons seemed to be after the prince as well, and they thought it was a right call to not kill that man, Haraida, and make a deal with him. The demon lord with blue aura claimed he was not after the prince, but a knight called the Empire's Sword, since he was one of the strongest humans and the demon lord wanted to remove him from his path. Haraida asked if these many demon lords would be enough to deal with the Empire's Sword, but Prince Adolf didn't expect that man to strike a deal with demon lords just to kill him. He figures Haraida wasn't stupid enough to think he will survive this, but Haraida had no will to survive either, as long as he could kill the Prince Adolf even if it takes his own life. Haraida pointed his sword at Adolf and charged it with a lot of demonic energy. One strike from his sword caused the whole ground to rumble, and the knight asked Adolf to get inside the carriage, since its barrier would make sure to keep him safe. Prince Adolf turned to Demon King Karos to get his opinion on this interesting situation, and when he asked him if he knew those demon lords out there, Karos replied he didn't know any one of them, but he was sure about one thing, that they were not weak. His claim was backed by the statement from Luberia, when she said that most of the demons in the human world were killed, so Karos figured if these ones survived it, they were at least mid to high-tier demon lords. Prince Adolf seemed amused, and he asked his knight Quasha what they should do, but unexpectedly, Quasha replied in a woman's voice to tell the prince to shut up. The story took a plot twist as Quasha removed the disguised face mask and she turned out to be a beautiful knight with silver hairs and eagle-like sharp eyes. She damned the prince for always getting into troubles, and now the demons attacked them with a large sphere charged with demonic energy. However, Quasha just sliced in half with one strike, and the demon lords realized that the Empire's swords have always kept her real identity hidden under a mask. Quasha then provoked the demon lords to follow her, and all of them took the bait and chased after her to the woods, leaving Haraida behind. Haraida tried to remind them they came here to deal with the prince, but the demon lords told the scoundrel not to forget his place while talking to them, and they could just kill the prince any time. Haraida was left behind by the demon lords, but since the Empire's sword was gone anyway, he decided to deal with the prince by himself. Haraida sent the remaining knights to kill the prince, and they surrounded the carriage without leaving any path for the prince to escape. Meanwhile, Quasha was being chased by 5 demon lords, and they were trying to catch her while shooting demon beams at her, but she was agile enough to dodge by making use of so many trees and hide herself. The blue demon lord lost sight of her, and the next second, she showed up behind him and threw a jab to the demon lord's neck. The demon lord commended her for being quite strong even with punches, but he was confident that he'll not lose to her. But while he charged the demonic sphere, the demon lord lost sight of her again. Suddenly, he got his arm grabbed by Quasha, and she warned him to never let his guard down again if he unexpectedly survives this. She twisted that demon lord's hand to charge his own demonic sphere at another orange demon lord, who got blown away to bits by it. Now Quasha had to deal with only 4 more demon lords, and she drew her sword and pointed it at the demon lord, stating she was going to take it seriously now. Meanwhile, our guy takes the prince outside the carriage from the other side, and he holds the attacking knights, warning them to step ahead only if they don't mind dying. Knights were shocked at the appearance of another demon lord, while Haraida was damned to all this, so he just decided to attack the Prince Adolf himself, while that demon lord was busy with holding knights. He lunged his sword at the prince, but Adolf caught it with his bare hands. Adolf's hands got cut and started bleeding as he struggled to keep the sword an inch away from stabbing his stomach. Karos got worried for the Prince Adolphe while Harada just retreated his sword and launched another strike at him. This time, he managed to send the sword through the Prince Adolphe's body, after which the prince began to bleed excessively and was at a near-death experience. It was when he asked Demon Lord Karos if he would save his life, but instead of just helping him out, Karos figured why don't Prince Adolphe just strike a deal with him to save his life. Adolphe had no other choice, so he accepted to make a deal, and Karos initiated to form a contract with the Prince Adolphe.